Hi, I'm Mr. Miyagi, and this is Mr. Miyagi's Workshop. Well, you see, it's another rainy day in the Pacific Northwest, so thought we'd tackle on this old 69 CT90. Yeah, it's missing its power plant. Now, when I bought this bike, it didn't run. I got it to run, and then it didn't run quite as well as I wanted it to. I did find a few little problems with it. The carburation on it, I ended up changing out the carburetor and it worked a little better, but it still smoked. So I decided that I kind of want to get rid of the smoking. I have a 1976 out there in the other building, and it runs quite nice. It was bought along with this, and it's a go-getter. Mrs. Miyagi leaves me in the dirt with that one. So I decided that I kind of wanted to go through the motor on this one here. So I'm going to take you over to the bench and we can take a look and see what I've found. I ended up pulling this motor apart and just double checking stuff. I pulled the head off and the cylinder off. Well, one of the main things I found is that the piston at one time was scored, and that's probably to the fact that it was frozen in the cylinder here, and it had been rebored. This is probably a second or third stage. This is a .50 millimeter over piston. But I also found that it had a busted compression ring, and the other rings were basically kind of stuck. Plus, I don't know if you can make that out on the top up there. It looked like a valve had let loose at one period of time or something on this. So I'm going to end up having to take the head apart. Now, I did hone this out and then mic the inside, and I could just get another piston and put in here. But what I ended up doing is I went to this company in Utah, and I bought one of their piston cylinder kits. This is a 51 millimeter piston that goes in here. So this would be like the fourth stage of a bore job on this, I would believe. 1 point over the standard 50 millimeter. It's a really nice setup. They've cleaned it up. You can send this for a core and you can get some money back on it. I've decided to keep it in case I end up getting another little Honda 90. I'm on this one. Like I said, I honed out the inside of it and it looks good, mic'd it. Everything is great. It just needs a piston and a set of rings. I am going to tear into this head and just see what's going on with it, if there's any damage or anything going on with it. So we'll clean this up a bit and get it going. Another thing too that came with when I bought both of the motorcycles, I got a bunch of parts and stuff. I also got a cam that I'm debating on whether to put in. This is a performance cam. I could put back the stock cam, or I can put this longer duration, which would give me a little bit more horsies. I'm debating on that. We'll see what happens there. Meanwhile, I'm going to get back and get this head ready. One of the things I'm doing here is I'm going to go ahead and pull these rocker arms out. And you want to maintain the rocker arms and all the rocker parts in the same, in valves, and whether it was an intake or an exhaust. So one of the things you do have to do is you do have to take out these adjustments so you can get the rocker arm totally out of there. They just didn't screw. And then we go back to pulling this rocker arm pin out, and that's just right in there. I just grab it with a pair of pliers. So that goes together. That's And then this should slide out easily. So that's the intake one. Here again, you can't get that past everything. You do have to take those adjustment screws out. So the best way to do it is just put the pin back in or leave the pin in. And then you can take a 9mm and loosen that off and then just unscrew it. All right, so that's the exhaust. We'll go ahead and pull out the exhaust pin. That over there. There we go. Another thing you want to look at is you want to look at the ride surface where the cam rides and see if there was any rough edges there. Don't look too bad. And there's the stock cam. All right, so now we're going to pull this all apart. Now I have to get out my little puller here, and we'll continue on. But first off, I think I want to do is I want to clean this up with the valves in place. This is just a simple wire brush on them. And that really does help tremendously to clean up that area where the combustion chamber is on the head. That looks pretty good. This is just some spray-on parts cleaner. Doesn't look too bad, but this is looking pretty good here. So we're going to go ahead and pop these valves out. I do have one of these nice little valve pullers. We're going to work on the exhaust first. These work pretty well. You do need a magnet because you want to pull these keepers out. These little keepers here. And that goes with the exhaust one. There's the other one right there. Two halves out of there. I'm going to slowly back this off. Now, I'm not sure where I got this valve spring compressor. It could have been from Harbor Freight or one of the motorcycle stores. But another thing was a little cap piece for the springs. And these will have two springs on them. The outer and the inner. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push this exhaust valve out. And it's really not all that bad. I think what we'll do is we'll lap this back in, and I'll show you how to do that a little later. I'm going to go ahead and pull this intake one out. Same process. Basically what we're doing here is we're just riding this valve on here on this lower piece in the center there, and then this pushes down and compresses the spring so you can get the keepers out. And what's also kind of nice about this unit is that it lips around that keeper quite nicely. So we're screwing this down. Get my little magnet here. There's one keeper half, and we'll get the other one out, and there's the other, and then we're going to back this off. This set of ring compressors for the valves, this little cap piece, it literally fits inside there, which holds everything kind of in place. And this comes with different sizes. This is a 23mm, and it has like a 25, and it drops down to even smaller valves and such. But it's kind of nice. This works quite well. Here again, we've got that keeper off, the main top off. We're going to pull the outer spring off, the inner spring. Also on these, we're going to pull this off the exhaust. A seal that goes around, the valve stem itself, keeps it from leaking And then down on the base of these, if you make that out, there is another little flat washer down in there that fits against the head, and that's where the springs ride on. And that was for the exhaust. So now we're going to pull out the intake ones after I get the valve out. Let's take a look here. Well, that intake valve looks pretty good. So we'll just clean these valves up here and relap them back in. You know, I found bits and pieces of something in there, and I finally figured out where it came from. That lower spring on the intake has cracked. Let's see if I can find some where I can get that piece. I'll get back here. I'm gonna take this over and clean his head up a little bit more. We're gonna seat these valves. This one is close to really kind of needing a grind, but it's not pitted. So what I'm gonna use is some seating compound, and I've got two kinds here. We have a coarse and a fine, and I'm going to use the coarse first to kind of face it in there, but I just use my drill and a piece of rubber hose here. And one thing that we'll want to do is that we'll want to lubricate the shaft on the valve itself. Get a little lubrication on there, but then you want to place a little bit of this compound around, and try not to get it onto the actual valve shaft, because it will tend to eat away at it. So we'll put that up in there, and then we'll take that rubber hose and shove it on there. And the reason why I'm doing that is I can't get in there with my drill that well. And then we just chuck that up on there. And you can, basically all you're doing is you're moving that valve back and forth again. You go one way with it, and then go the other way with it. But you want to lift that off that seat, so what that does is it smears that valve compound around a bit. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's that compound digging in and grinding the surface basically. So you're sitting the valve seat and the valve itself. You can you see that? How that's shining up there a bit. And then we'll check in here, and that's starting to look pretty good. So I'm gonna continue on that, and then I will switch over to the fine once I get to a certain stage. Once this gets silvered all the way around, that means that the valve is sitting in there proper. So you can see that really set that up nicely. I went to a fine there a little bit, and you can look at the valve seat here, how it shined it up nicely. So one thing you want to make sure is, though, before you put this together, you want to make sure that all of that grit is been cleaned out of there. So I'm going to flip this around and do the intake valve now. Another thing, like on these old Honda valves, they actually have a little groove in there that you could take a screwdriver back and forth if you didn't want to use the drill. You just want to make sure that's good and clean. There you go. Anyway, I'm going to seat this one in, and then I'll get back to you. The intake turned out pretty well too. You can see how well that seat looks in there. So this is basically ready to go back together. The only problem is I don't have the other little outer valve springs, so I had to ordered two just to replace them, but they won't be here for a little bit. That's the way things are nowadays. Takes a bit. But I can move on to cleaning up all these parts and pieces. And I'm not out here to say that this is the proper way to doing it. What I'm doing is I'm trying to do this without spending a lot of money on this unit. At the same time, I'm trying to make it run good too. So it's a lot of fixing up what you got and moving on. Well, it's another day, and I spent some time cleaning up these cases, and then I painted them a little. Got these seals. I ended up buying a kit, and we're going to install these today. They push in fairly easy. What you can use is a socket and a socket extension, and just tap a lot of these in place. I push those down in there so that they're even around, something with a little more oomph behind it. Now you do want to remember when you're sliding all this stuff together, you want to lubricate these seals in here and on the shaft that they're going on so they'll slide on a little easier. Now there's one big one right here, and this is for the reduction, the high-low speed. And that seal needs to go in the proper way. Want to make sure that this solid surface goes on the inside. So this is where the shaft goes through. This is your sprocket shaft, and that's where that rides. But there's going to be oil and everything in here, so you want to make sure that you have that sealed proper. So these lipped edge need to be on the, basically on the inside. And I know that there's somebody out there going, oh my God, he's using a socket and a hammer on an extension. Well, I'm not beating on it that hard. You got to watch out for the shift lever here, that you're not going to be banging on it. Okay, the seals are in place on both these units. What I think we're going to do is we're going to put clutch side back together here. So now what I got here is a couple of 4x4s. And I'm going to use that as my work stand. There you go. So that gets it up and working, and kind of stabilizes everything, because we have a little spring and everything that needs to go in place here, or drop it down the hole. God. All right, we'll try this again. We'll stick the spring down and that unit right in there. I haven't worked on these all that much, so a lot of this stuff is kind of new to me. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the manual. Okay, I double checked everything. This is the way this is supposed to rock in there, with that lipped edge down inside there and fit on this area that's cut away. And you want to make sure that you've gotten that little spring and everything down there, a little plunge. Okay, I double checked everything. This is the way this is supposed to rock in there, with that lipped edge down inside there and fit on this area that's cut away. And you want to make sure that you've gotten that little spring and everything down there, a little plunger. So there's a little drop-in area and a little pin, and that goes down inside there, and then that'll lock in. And then we're just going to put the for right now, we're just going to snug it down a little bit. So we've got to put a gasket on here, and they have these little guide pins that you want to make sure that you don't lose these while you're cleaning everything up. And when they hold this case and the gasket in place. And I went around and cleaned up all my area, and basically all I do is, this is a little scraper tool that I got from the hardware, and it works quite well for cleaning off the old residual gasket material. You just want to go through. Oh, I want to bring up one other thing too. There is a little screen located in this area, in the drain area, that you should pull out when you got the side case off and clean up to make sure it's all the particles and everything are off of it. There was a few. I've actually found some. I think it came from that valve spring that were in there. I like to use this gasket dressing material. It works out quite well. You put it on and you put a little bit on the gasket and it just helps. All you're going to do is you're just going to put a thin layer. So you can take like a little small paintbrush and just go around and paint that on. And I just do this basically on the case side. And then I'll also do it on the case side gasket so that it has a decent seal. This thing was leaking in several different places, and I'm not sure exactly where the major leak was coming from, but I would assume that it was from the seals around the shift lever and the kick lever and a couple other spots. I use this on the old Harleys. It really helps seal up their cases. There's no gasket in those, but I just use this stuff. So we've got that coated on there. And this, I think I'm just going to slip on. This is tacked up kind of nice. Doesn't take long. You want to slip those over those pin locks for the case. Kind of line up everything for the screw holes. All right, looks good. And then very carefully, we'll put this together. I'm going to apply a little bit of lubricant on this when I'm putting this together, along with the shaft here. And I'm going to put some on the seal too. Okay, so I've got everything kind of pretty much lined up here. This is all kind of centered. So you kind of slowly want to drop that on there. There it goes. Now I also ended up buying some Allen screws for the case. I just got the kit. It wasn't all that much. It was about 12 bucks. So you basically just have to go around and kind of figure out where all the screws fit. I've gone around and figured out where all these Allen screws go to and torqued them down. We can do, oh yeah, this is the drive. I was dinking around there, it fell out. I'm going to put a little lubricant on the shafts. This actually drives the oil pump, plus a guide for the timing chain. And this shaft here seems to be pretty good. I just put some lubricant around it because I'm going to put it back up in there. Yeah, I just want to make sure that everything is lubricated. And then that just pops down in there. But this is a new chain. The other one was in okay shape, but wasn't all that much for this. And I figured, what the heck, I'll go ahead and replace it. Couldn't take it any longer, so I built a mount to hold this motor. And I can pivot and get it into different positions that I need it in. This can swivel and everything. I just made it out of some scrap stuff that I had laying around the shop. It's going to make my life a little easier. I do this to most of the motors that I work on. I make them up. Okay, this is about as far as we're going to get until I get the rest of my parts. So we've got the engine somewhat together. We built the stand so we can sit here and rotate it around however we want it. I have a few other little tools I'll be showing that I came up with for these that you can make at home. But if there's any questions on this episode 1 on the CT90, you can put it in the comment section below, or you can send it to my email at tmiyagi@hotmail.com. Now, if you've liked this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget that ringy-dingy button over there for the next episode coming up. So this is Mr. Miyagi saying, be safe out there. Hope to see you on the road. Ciao.